Thanks. All right, today we just want to talk a little bit about why DraftSight and 2D still matters. So, of course, it's a lot of fun to see the 3D models. It's great to see the things that people can 3D print in the classroom and develop their 2D drawings directly from. But 2D as a skill is still highly critical. It's still in demand. And to be put it bluntly, it's just not going away because it's used everywhere. It's still just such a huge thing. There are just simply things that are easier to do in 2D, especially as you get into skilled trades where a schematic or a simple representation can do the job and communicate the information needed to get the work done. On the other end of that spectrum are things that are just simply too complex, even with all our computing power, even with distributed computing, even with the power of things like the 3D experience platform, to be able to capture in a way that's effectively communicated in 3D. So again, 2D to the rescue. And we don't see an end to this because it's just not going away. So what does that mean for students? Well, the first thing, of course, is jobs. So we, of course, talk a lot about 3D, but in reality, if you take a look at job postings, this is just the last 12 months, you'll see that the trend we've seen for the last many years continues, that anywhere from 3 to 4 times the number of people are looking for AutoCAD or 2D as SolidWorks. And this is not to demean SolidWorks or to not say that it's not a critical skill. It's just there are so many more jobs. And that's why we need to keep this effective in our classrooms and make sure that students have the options and have the flexibility. I even included Indiana down at the bottom because that is the highest concentration of manufacturing in any state in the United States. And even there, you'll see it's double the number of ads. So equipping our students for the future and giving them the most options requires that they still understand 2D. So let's talk a bit about what DraftSight is. DraftSight is a best-in-class 2D CAD solution. Okay, we're focusing on DWG. We'll talk a little bit about more about that in going on, but we also want to include some flexibility. For example, we work with 64-bit Windows or Mac OS. We also allow standalone licensing. So if you want to set up a classroom or where you're just a single solitary classroom, let's say you're a smaller district. I went to a high school with 109 students in the whole high school, so we didn't have an IT department. Or you want to do distributed shareable network licensing. We offer that. It's not just named user. We do also, of course, offer what would be the equivalent of named user using the 3D experience platform. So of course, again, it's about having flexibility. Okay. And we, of course, have hundreds of thousands of commercial users around the world already talking about DraftSight and using DraftSight. Well, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of how you start using DraftSight in your classroom. First off, I mentioned briefly DWG. It is still a DWG file. In fact, it is still 100% compatible with any AutoCAD DWGs that you already have, or if you're using another DWG based 2D CAD program. So you're not having to recreate all your data for your lesson files. Any block libraries, any attributes that are in the blocks, if you're using dynamic blocks, which is a great tool to teach, we have our version called custom blocks, but we can reuse existing dynamic blocks. So once again, you're not having to start over to transition your classroom to DraftSight. And of course, we're using the same viewports and layout workflows. We have external references. And so what it boils down to is you can just keep using the same lesson files that you already have prepared. Okay. That also means that you can preserve your skills. So you're not having to relearn a whole new tool to start working with DraftSight. Now, DraftSight does have some differences, but we work very hard to maintain a consistent workflow, consistent workspace. It's customizable if there's certain things you prefer to do as far as having tool palettes or certain toolbars that might be open. You can make all those same customizations in DraftSight and work the way that you're used to working and teaching. The command consistency. We have command aliases. So I mentioned there are slight differences between DraftSight and, let's just be upfront about it, and AutoCAD. We'll focus on that. But where there are differences, we use our aliases. So for example, there is no purge command inside of DraftSight. We have the same tool that does the same thing, but it's called clean. But in DraftSight, if your muscle memory kicks in and you start typing purge, it will offer you in parentheses, very subtly, it'll say clean. But if you just finish typing purge or get that to highlight in your quick access menu and press enter, you will get the clean tool. It works just like purge. It works like the tool you're used to teaching your students to get rid of all that extra stuff out of their drawings. But we just have a different name for it. But DraftSight does speak the language and understand what you're talking about when you ask it in AutoCAD command. All right, we also have the programmable keyboard shortcuts if people want to get into that. And again, anything that a student learns using DraftSight, they're going to be able to use with other tools because you don't really know where they're going to end up in industry. They might end up using AutoCAD, they might end up using something else, but the workflows are so consistent between these tools that their skills are going to transfer. If they go to a post-secondary institution that's still using AutoCAD, you can help them fix that. But they're going to be able to work in the classroom and excel. All right, I mentioned command consistency. I just wanted to give you a feel for the UI consistency, especially since you might be transferring your lesson files and you want to practice and make sure you're comfortable. Here, for example, is the optional interface for DraftSight that we specifically made to map out and look like AutoCAD. And these command aliases. So you can see we don't have the array tool. We call it pattern. But if you type array, you get pattern, and it works the same. The dialogues look the same. You're going to be able to just be productive from day one. That's really one of the key elements in the commercial space that we succeed with DraftSight is we are the non-disruptive change. All right. Well, Dassault, of course, has been investing in DraftSight now for 15 years. A few of the items on the left are just what we've added in the last couple of years or enhanced. Of course, we've had a lot of these capabilities for a long time, but you'll notice that we've been building out beyond as well. So for some of you that are teaching Revit and might want to give students an opportunity to learn how to make detailed drawings from the Revit data, our Enterprise Plus and Premium offering, depending if it's network or standalone, has the ability to take RVT files, or if you're teaching CATIA for BIM, the IFM files, and break down those into sections, elevations, details, do scheduling, do all of that work directly in DraftSight from those 3D files. And if those 3D files are updated, you can update the links and it will update the drawings. It's a really nice workflow, but we are very highly focused on making sure that DraftSight is not only competitive, but starting to step out away from the pack and starting to create new feature capabilities that are offering our commercial customers great new workflows that can benefit the classroom as well. All right, I mentioned flexibility. We do have the ability to do network licensing. So these are, if you're used to have labs where you shared licenses across multiple labs, we can go back to that. We also have the standalone, as I mentioned. And for those labs that if you're already using SOLIDWORKS on a network license, DraftSight works on that same SOLIDWORKS network license manager. So you're not having to stand up a new instance or a new license manager. It's just compatible and ready to start working. We also have certifications available. So we already have an associate level DraftSight certification, which is a great asset for students to have, as well as we are in our final stages of finishing our professional certification. We did betas this year and last year at 3D Experience World, and I took the exam. I passed it. which is probably to be expected, but nonetheless, uh, it's a great tool and it's going to be ready to go before next school season. We should have the professional certification as well. Of course, students, you might want to focus on associate. We've had that up and running for about 3 years now. So it's a standing certification available to you today and available to your students. So what I would like to do now, I peek over here. I don't see any questions as of yet. I'm just curious. I forgot to launch DraftSight, but I could always show it to you if you like. It looks like we have some time. If there's interest in that, please comment. The certifications would fall under whatever rules. I believe that I don't know enough about how certifications work in the EDU space, but it would be, I'm sure, under the same qualifications or same limitations as SolidWorks.
Tom, maybe while we are waiting for questions, if you can run DraftSight and show our audience how it looks like, it might be a good addition. Also, everyone in the webinar, please don't hesitate to share any question you have. It's a great time to share, and Tom knows how he can help you. So please use this opportunity. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. All right. Just one moment. Zoom, of course, makes all computers work at 1/4 speed. Let's see here. All right. So here's DraftSight. I might have to move some dialogues over. As you can see, it's got the same start page that you're probably familiar with. Very familiar interface. Let's open up a simple little drawing here. Let's take a look at the interface itself. This is our standard drafting and annotation interface. This is one that we developed based on the most commonly used tools. Puts it right up front. I do recommend, teaching from this interface. However, just to get it right out there in the open, we also have our other workspaces. We have a classic workspace, which more of a toolbar focus. And then we also have our CAD General interface. Our CAD General interface is the one made to make AutoCAD users, existing AutoCAD users, maybe yourself, more comfortable getting started. It puts that command layout in very familiar positions. We do have the option of drop-down menus as well. We have the option of our tool palettes, of course, are working the way they should, and they still work like tool palettes you would expect. Being able to go in and make quick modifications. This is not the drawing I was looking for, but yeah, being able to develop your model, any of the same tools work. Yeah. If you're working with blocks edit properly. If you're working with things like dynamic blocks, the wrong drawing. Pardon me for a moment. Oh, that's not the one either. We'll just stick with this. But dynamic blocks, any of your command line tools, insert, you get your pop-up menu. You'll have their blocks that are existing in here. Be able to select works the same way, being able to specify scale or position or rotation or on screen or in advance. So the dialog boxes are going to work the same. Layers management is the same properties. If you're concerned about older data that you might have lying around, let's go ahead and open a file. See here. See if I can find myself. Where are all my stuff? I lost all my stuff. What on earth is going on? Huh. Oh, let's search for something. There we are. I'm sorry. So here we have a file from September of 1987. Not sure how many people on the call were around in September of 1987, but this is an old DWG file. If I go to modify anything, let's go to this block, maybe change some of the block attributes. They update just like they would have back in 1987, but we can go in and apply a note, which is our version of mtext. Maybe make this a little more reasonable. Yeah, let's try something in between. There. And now we're able to save that, continue working with it, doing whatever we like to do. Can DraftSight automatically make 3D file after imported to, I'll say from SOLIDWORKS. If you take a step file or a SAT file from a 3D modeling system, we have a tool that can make flat pattern or make flat snapshot is the tool. It will generate the hidden line views. You can have it automatically assign object lines to a specific layer, hidden lines to a specific layer. And based on your point of view of the model, it will go ahead and create those orthographic projections for you. It is not associative in the sense that like a SOLIDWORKS would be, but it can be a good exercise for students to see that there are people that still use that workflow where they are detailing their 3D models from SOLIDWORKS in tools like DraftSight. The question is, if you have a license for SOLIDWORKS, do you get a DraftSight or is it separate? It is separate. One thing to note though, yeah, it's a separate license. Let's see if I can find my proper drawing. Yeah, that's the one I was hoping to show. Yeah, I don't know if all of you are comfortable with tool palettes, but for example, if I'm working in layer 0, which is, I always draw everything on layer 0, but I can build tools into the tool palette. I have access to in DraftSight, it's E snaps rather than O snaps, but nonetheless, they work exactly the same. For nearest, a shift right click, I get to that menu, able to drop that in. And I've just created this spline on the correct layer for that type of work without having to change the layer in advance. And then, of course, we have our block capabilities. If you do want to use things like the pattern tool, or you can use the tools like copy, where we now have our command line options where we can pick and we can say that we want to create a pattern with 5 elements based on a fit. So we can say we want to create our pattern up to there and drop all those in. So exactly the same workflows you're used to. This looks like AutoCAD. Is it better if someone asks you why to choose DraftSight? Why would you say, sir? Honestly, the key with DraftSight is really just the association with Dassault System. Being able to work with the same team, the same education team, being able to, partner with it. We are not trying to create a tool that's radically different. At this point, we are adding some tools like the BIM capability, which kind of stand apart from AutoCAD. But right now, we're trying to address the needs of our customers that have 2D for commercial users. One of the points that's a benefit of DraftSight is the extraordinary difference in price. So commercially, a seat of AutoCAD will set you back now $2,090 a year, and you must buy it every year or you cannot work. And everyone who touches it must have a dedicated license. For a lot of our SOLIDWORKS customers that are still making the transition from AutoCAD to DraftSight, that's an incredible burden on their budgets and limits their ability to, give raises, make investments in the company, where we're offering a tool that our tool starts at $599 for that level of functionality, that same level or slightly higher level of functionality. And for slightly more money, they can do shareable licenses. So that instead of having to buy 200 licenses and have 60% of them only used very occasionally, they can now just buy, say, 80 or 100 licenses at a lower price individually and save an enormous amount of money and be able to invest in better things while keeping all their existing legacy data intact and keeping their user skills intact. So they're not having to re-educate everyone. So for us having that commercial capability, we want to make sure that we're offering those tools for students to be able to be familiar with them in the education space as well. Yes. Does DraftSight have preloaded 2D models of standard mechanical components? Yes, we have a nuts and bolts library, some other types of tools. Uh, that's all available inside as well. Another part of that question was how does it compare in relevance to mechanical designers as opposed to architecture? In all reality, when it comes to this type of work, lines are lines, circles are circles. They just mean different things to different people. We do have the mechanical libraries built in, and you can use those. We actually have a pretty enormous set of libraries built in, from basic tools to symbologies. These are built in. Of course, you can add your own libraries based on tool palettes is a great way to do it. You can even populate out a whole new tool palette. Say you have a block library on your network. You can create a tool palette from that. Boom. And it works very nicely. We also have the ability, there's a tool in DraftSight to be able to go into any other drawing and grab a layer, a line type, a block, any sort of special entity and bring it into the current drawing directly as well. Design resources, we have a tool palette for that as well. Okay. Any other questions? Like I said, our goal here is not to reinvent the wheel, is to make it easy to transfer your skills and your data over to a new tool that is from Dassault, that's from the SolidWorks team, the education team, and get you up and running on a unified environment, and hopefully, just able to start working with things even this next semester.
I just saw one more question about the CSWA and CSWP exam vouchers. So this webinar, we're not providing codes for those, but keep following along. We do that occasionally on our EDU webinars. Looks like we have one more, Tom. I don't know if you want to take that one.
Purpose and applications. Purpose is kind of a big question. Just to provide people with the tools that they are still needing. Applications are incredibly broad. Look around you. Honestly, Like I said, there's still many times the number of 2D users, and they are spread across everything. Everything from your municipalities being able to do permitting to electrical schematics are still almost entirely done with 2D. You know, tools like SolidWorks Electrical are great, but the vast majority of 2D electrical schematics, as well as plumbing, P&ID, any type of schematic is going to be done in a 2D tool, almost certainly. Same with architecture, of course, has come up several times. That's a big concentration because while BIM might be what the architects use to define the building, what the builders, what the contractors, what the people who actually construct it use is 2D drawings. 2D is, and for any remaining foreseeable future, will be our communication tool. In fact, one of the best things about SolidWorks is its ability to create 2D drawings. And that's something that kind of gets lost sometimes. I remember back when I had a real job many years ago, I was doing a ton of 3D, and I was frequently reminded that that's all great, but it's got to be a 2D drawing to be our legal document. And for most companies, that is the rule of the day. You know, if they lose all their solid models, that would be horrible. That would set them back a long time. But if they lost all their 2D drawings, their legal documents, that puts the entire company in peril, because if they get any sort of liability issue, they have to be able to present those drawings in a case. So 2D is still critical to business.
I see a couple more questions about certifications. So as we mentioned, this one will not be giving out vouchers for certifications, but if you are either an instructor who already has SolidWorks or one of our Dassault products, or a student who goes to a school that has SolidWorks, please go to your instructor and ask. We do give anyone who purchases SolidWorks from us the ability to get certification for their students. So if you're a student, ask your instructor. And if you're an instructor and you don't know how to get access to those, you can reach out to me after the webinar. Tom has our email addresses coming up here.
Okay. Yeah, actually, let me swap back over. A couple other questions. Is there a free trial? Yes, there's a 30-day trial available online. Pardon me. And you can download that. You can work with your partner to get your education partner to get a hold of a trial version. Another question is, you can design a SolidWorks to save it as DWG. Why use DraftSight specifically? Well, you kind of answered your own question in a way. Why would you save it as a DWG if not for the need for the company or the user to be able to make modifications to the DWG? And that's where DraftSight steps in. Also, in manufacturing environments, we see SolidWorks dominate in the engineering department itself, the core product definition. That is where SolidWorks lives, whether it be coming from a mechanical engineering and design perspective or an industrial design perspective. But once that product gets defined, you'll find that throughout the rest of the process, whether it be planning the manufacturing, planning the packaging, planning the distribution, maintaining and managing the equipment that produces the product, that is almost entirely 2D. I've had the opportunity to go on site in some of our best customers, both on the CATIA side and the SolidWorks side, and core engineering is 3D. The rest of the process is 2D. This is why I say it's still a critical skill for students to learn, and it's a very powerful vocational attribute for them to have, is exposure to 2D and an understanding of what the workflows are. All right. If you have any questions, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly with an email, or you can also find out more at DraftSight.com as well.